Is America truly becoming Gilead? How much of The Handmaid's Tale's terrifying fiction has already come to pass? Maybe more than you'd think.
We don't put anything in the show that hasn't happened somewhere. So everything, no matter how dark it is, it's happened.
As the shock of the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade spread through the U.S., many turned to comparisons to The Handmaid's Tale, the horrific dystopian series based on Margaret Atwood's 1985 novel about fertile women being turned into childbearing slaves. It struck a nerve when it started airing in 2017, as the election of Donald Trump suddenly made the story feel a little less far-fetched.
The brilliance of Margaret Atwood's book is it's been relevant for over 30 years. It was relevant in '85 when it came out, and unfortunately it remains relevant now.
But a few years later, The Handmaid's Tale's brutal, medieval-feeling Republic of Gilead seems downright possible here in the USA, and a lot sooner than we could have ever imagined. So let's look at what from the story has come true so far in the US, and what hasn't, yet.
Better never means better for everyone. It always means worse for some.
In the puritanical regime of Gilead, which takes over the USA, fertile women are turned into handmaids, raped by powerful men called commanders, and forced to give birth to babies who are taken away and placed with the commanders and their wives. All this sounds far too bleak to be imaginable in the US, but elements of it are already happening in some states. Women being forced to carry unwanted pregnancies to term? Check. Even if they're raped or even still children themselves? Incredibly, yes. Unless they can afford to travel to a place where abortion's still legal. Some forms of contraception are even said to be next up on the anti-abortion agenda, and in Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas's concurring opinion for Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization, the case that overturned Roe, that the court should reconsider Griswold v. Connecticut ruling, which declared the right to contraception as protected. No doubt taking away rights to contraceptives would substantially add to the unwanted pregnancies women could be forced to carry. In A Handmaid's Tale flashback of pre-Gilead USA, we see how our current state of affairs led to Gilead's status quo. Janine, a single mom struggling to make ends meet, can't afford a second baby and schedules an abortion at a place that actually turns out to be a crisis pregnancy center.
I want to go through with it. That's why I'm here.
Well, we don't do them here.
What? What is this place?
Somewhere we can help you understand what happens when you choose abortion.
In today's America, countless of these anti-abortion centers use scary misinformation to talk people out of abortions.
Abortion is dangerous.
Collect women's personal information with no HIPAA obligation to keep it private, and already outnumber actual abortion clinics in many areas. In the first episode of Handmaid's Tale, June and Emily walk by someone who's been hanged for working in an abortion clinic. While this isn't happening in the US, people are being prosecuted for aiding abortions in any way in Texas, Idaho, and more states soon to follow, while women who've aborted or miscarried can even face criminal charges of murder. Within Gilead, same-sex relationships are outlawed, termed gender treachery, and brutally punished, sometimes with death. In the US today, a record number of new laws across the country, like Florida's Don't Say Gay bill, are targeting LGBT rights and restricting gay and transgender youth's access to protections and discussion involving their sexuality or identity.
You're injecting these concepts about choosing your gender. That is just inappropriate for our schools.
And Clarence Thomas also wrote in his Dobbs opinion that the court should reconsider past cases Obergefell v. Hodges, which ruled the right to same-sex marriage is protected, as well as Lawrence v. Thomas, which ruled anti-sodomy laws unconstitutional. In other words, he's suggesting many states could revert to a time where same-sex marriage is no longer legal and homosexuality is even criminalized. This is basically what we see happen in A Handmaid's Tale flashback when Emily and her wife are confronted by ICE agents who tell them that their marriage is all of a sudden no longer recognized.
The document is no longer recognized. You are not married. It's forbidden.
Gilead took control of the U.S. by bombing the White House, while a relatively small number of men with guns stormed the U.S. Capitol and declared martial law.
Who is that?
It's the Capitol. 20 or 30 guys with machine guns just started shooting from the galleries.
It definitely seemed like nothing that could really happen until January 6, 2021. Evidence that Trump supported that event, as well as his blatant attempts to overrule the results of the 2020 Democratic election, backed by a significant portion of the Republican Party, make it clear that such a coup or seizure of power is more than possible in the U.S.'s near future. Gilead is ruled by a theocratic inner circle of male commanders with all the power.
You are the misery of all men. All of you.
In our current climate, an increasing number of political candidates are calling for end to separation of church and state. The Supreme Court is issuing decision after decision at odds with the majority wishes of the U.S. population. And gerrymandering across the country is ensuring that an ever smaller percentage of voters are dictating who's elected, assuming those elections will even be respected. All of this makes Gilead's Council of Unelected Men seem less and less unrealistic.
America was not initially founded as an 18th century Enlightenment republic. It was initially a 17th century theocracy.
Gilead's outlook is also inspired by historical precedents in the U.S., like the Puritanism and witch trials in our 17th century roots, and the rise of the Christian right in the 80s during the time Atwood was writing.
That tendency keeps bubbling up in America from time to time.
One of the most evil things Gilead does is to steal children from their parents, both newborns from the handmaids and older children from parents who are deemed unfit. Obviously, separating parents and their children could never happen here, except that it already has and is reportedly still happening. The Handmaid's Tale raises some terrifying ideas of what it could be like if the government were to expand criteria for taking children away on supposedly moral grounds. In one flashback, June is interrogated for giving her daughter medicine before sending her to daycare.
Did you medicate her to bypass the school's fever policy? So you wouldn't have to miss work today?
She's judged for working instead of staying home with her child.
We have busy lives, but children are so precious. We have to make certain that they are in a safe home environment with fit parents.
And she's ultimately deemed immoral because her husband was married to someone else when they first got together. In the days before Gilead, the world is undergoing a major fertility crisis.
So God whipped up a special plague, the plague of infertility.
And Gilead seizes on people's panic, pretending its policies are the only way to increase birth rates.
You girls will serve the leaders of the faithful and their barren wives. You will bear children for them.
The global birth rate has declined in our world too, around 50% over the last 70 years, and in the US, the birth rate declined nearly 20% from 2007 to 2020. Whereas in Handmaid's Tale, it becomes physiologically impossible for most women to have children, in our world, there's a more complex mix of factors, like the increased cost of raising children, changing cultural standards, and people having families later.
A new CDC report looks at fertility rates for women, finding families are getting smaller and women are having babies later in life.
Gilead's response is to remove all women's opportunities outside of childbearing and force them to have kids they don't want. In The Handmaid's Tale, Gilead also uses the climate crisis as a justification for its policies.
They filled the air with chemicals and radiation and poison.
And Margaret Atwood has said that women will suffer disproportionately as a result of climate catastrophes. In addition to hangings or making women become handmaids, Gilead imprisons women who are seen as immoral, i.e. adulterous or promiscuous, LGBT or abortion patients, by sending them to the colonies, where they're exposed to life-threatening radiation and worked basically to death.
Back to work! The Lord is my master. He is my strength and my sustenance. Not here.
This plot actually has a historical precedent in our country. In the early 1900s, during World War I, the American Plan locked up women thought to be promiscuous in order to protect soldiers from STDs or from being tempted by sex workers. And again, it's echoed in the initiative to criminally punish abortion patients. In its early days, Gilead takes away women's rights to hold jobs or own property, suddenly freezing all assets belonging to women.
Women can't own property anymore. Luke can use your account. I'll transfer the money to him. Or that's what they're saying, husband or male next of kin.
This is a key plot point that hasn't happened in the US, but it's terrifying to imagine how effective that would be at immediately disempowering all women.
You can't really predict the future, but you can speculate on what might be possible.
And it's not inconceivable if you look at other countries in the world. Women in Taliban-controlled Afghanistan are banned from working or receiving higher education. And according to the World Bank, as of 2019, women in half of the countries in the world are unable to assert equal land and property rights despite legal protections. In Gilead, women are forbidden from reading.
A society in which women can no longer read your book. Or anything else.
Today, unlike in some other countries, U.S. women's rights to education remain intact, but U.S. school curriculums and public libraries are seeing record numbers of challenges or bans of books dealing with topics like gender identity, racism, and sexuality. Politicians like Ron DeSantis and Harry McMaster objected to schools reading the book Genderqueer by Maya Kubabe, while Glenn Youngkin ran an ad featuring a parent upset that her teen son's class was reading Toni Morrison's Beloved, and Senator Ted Cruz took major issue with the book Anti-Racist Baby.
Do you agree with this book that is being taught with kids that babies are racist?
Senator,
in flashbacks to pre-Gilead USA, we see Serena Joy campaigning for Gilead's vision of women staying in the home as subservient wives and mothers.
I'm blessed to have a home and a husband to care for and follow.
This backstory is reminiscent of right-wing female personalities like Ann Coulter, Tomi Lahren, or Phyllis Schlafly, who gained platforms by promoting regressive gender ideas. Most recently, Amy Coney Barrett is the female addition to the Supreme Court who helped usher in the end of Roe v. Wade.
Is Roe a super precedent?
I'm answering a lot of questions about Roe, which I think indicates that Roe doesn't fall in that category.
In The Handmaid's Tale, as soon as Serena has served her purpose helping the rise of the Gilead regime, she's cast aside and given none of the power she expected. So it's a reminder that if you campaign against the rights of all women, or any minority group you belong to, you won't be the exception who escapes the consequences.
There is no one less worthy of redemption than you.
Other flashbacks to pre-Gilead US focus on June's mother, Holly, a feminist activist, and in those days, June isn't particularly political or eager to follow in her mother's footsteps. But as she experiences the brutality and injustice of Gilead, June becomes a total rebel and badass.
They should have never given us uniforms if they didn't want us to be an army.
Showing that sometimes you don't know the power you possess until you're truly pushed to take a stand.
You don't know what you're capable of until you have to do it.
There are still countless crucial major differences that are keeping the US from becoming Gilead. But the fact that many of these comparisons actually do work is beyond scary.
There are infinitely possible futures.
Like June, so many are outraged by the decisions being made for us. But from that hurt comes the need to act to protect the country we love and want to be free for all.
The Handmaid's Tale, based on Margaret Atwood's 1985 novel, is a show about strong, dynamic women. But it's set in a world where women are enslaved, heavily restricted in what they say or do. So much of what we learn about these women has to be communicated through other means than dialogue. Let's take a look at the cinematic techniques: framing, choreography, color, voiceover, music, and flashbacks that allow the show to include us in its characters' inner worlds as they confront the very wrong outer world that's closing in on them.
Blessed are the meek.
And blessed are those who suffer for the cause of righteousness.
Closely framed shots of the show's female characters, particularly Elizabeth Moss's Offred, show the complex range of emotion experienced by these women. So we can see on her face when Offred is lying, sarcastic, or in deep emotional pain. Remaining close with them is a way of visually making us feel their emotions, what they're not able to say or express.
I have found happiness. Yes.
The claustrophobic close-ups reinforce that they're trapped in Gilead just as they're trapped in the frame. Some of these shots place the women on the edges and in the corners of the frame, literally marginalizing them. And shots looking down on the women or putting them low in the frame emphasize their powerlessness. And the framing tells us it's not just the handmaids who are victims. Yvonne Strahovski's Serena Joy, the commander's wife, is part of one of the leading families of Gilead, but the close-ups on her face mirror those of Offred. Even if one has a higher status, both are slaves, marginalized in the corner of the frame instead of central and actively in control of the composition.
What?
The contrast between the oppressed, terrified women in the close-ups and the obedient, efficient handmaiden army in the wide-angle shots is striking, and it shows how much humanity can be lost in the transition from personal to abstract collective, from valuing individual lives to valuing only the greater good. Many shots are also obscured in some way because we share in the handmaid's point of view. Things are hidden from us, we're denied information. Color functions to highlight the categories or roles the women are sorted into. A woman is quickly defined by the color she wears and reduced to that function. Forcing the women to wear different colors is a strategic move, keeping them apart and distracting them with internal rivalries. The fertile women, handmaids, wear red. Red symbolizes fertility and menstrual blood, and it sets these women apart as a prized rarity. Yet a woman wearing red is traditionally associated with desire and sin, like a scarlet woman or the Bible's Mary Magdalene.
Little whores, all of them.
And these connotations clash with the official rhetoric of devout sacrifice surrounding the handmaid's position.
We aren't concubines or two-legged wombs.
Against the oppressively desaturated gray world of Gilead, the handmaid's red stands out, just as these women stand out as the one vibrant life force that remains in this drab world. Red is also the color of the bloodshed that Gilead uses to keep the handmaids enslaved. And as an aggressive color of action, red can symbolize power and rebellion. Since they're the only fertile women, they still have a source of power. If they could band together, society couldn't kill all of them, as Gilead and perhaps most of the world is unable to procreate without them.
Red's my color.
Well, that's lucky.
The name Offred, while literally a patronymic of Fred referring to her commander, also sounds like of red, which could be a hint that in the story she represents the universal experience of this red, abused, and eventually rebellious woman. The wife's turquoise, in contrast to the red of a Mary Magdalene, alludes to the blue garments of the pure Virgin Mary. The blue is symbolic of companionship, admiration, and loyalty, yet it's sexless and muted, masking the dissatisfaction of a wife who's reduced to a virginal state. The red and blue contrast with each other, showing that the system is intentionally placing the wives and handmaids in opposition to keep all women down. Martha's unmarried, non-fertile women wear khaki green to blend into the background. They're viewed as servants, given little more respect than furniture. Aunts, women who train and control the handmaids, wear brown. The brown's reminiscent of military dress, and according to Atwood, the color was chosen to be vaguely reminiscent of Nazi Germany, which adds another layer to the subconscious foreboding we feel.
Blessed are the meek, dear.
Men wear black, a universal color which allows them to be viewed as more whole, not defined by a function. However, they are still dressed in uniform, so they're not entirely free either. No one is in a system like this. At the end of the last episode, Offred remarks,
"They should have never given us uniforms if they didn't want us to be an army,"
cleverly reversing the intent of the colored uniforms to reduce and separate the women, as the red of the handmaid's suffering has brought them together. The show and Gilead are full of contrasts, the stated virtuous-sounding outer reality and the brutal inner one. Truth is filtered through the false embroidered vocabulary of the state.
You are hereby sentenced to the common mercy of the state.
And almost everyone we meet is a terrified slave who must praise the tyrannical totalitarian government. Because spoken words don't say what they mean, Offred's voiceover is crucial.
"I don't need oranges. I need to scream."
Mimicking the feel of the novel, the narration reveals June's private mind, the only place where she is free.
You going shopping?
No, Nick, I'm gonna knock back a few at the Oyster House bar. You wanna come along?
Yes. Her candid speech reminds us of the person she still is behind the facade. Educated, sarcastic, honest, and her blunt commentary can provide humor.
10 ways to tell how he feels about you. Number 2, he keeps finding ways to accidentally run into you.
In the very first episode, Offred's misjudging of Ofglin.
I kind of want to tell her that I sincerely believe that Ofglin is a pious little shit with a broomstick up her ass.
Under his eye.
Under his eye.
Helps us grasp how effective the world's strict regulation of speech and behavior is in separating the women.
I always thought you were such a true believer.
So are you. So frickin' pious. They do that really well. Make us distrust each other.
As we observe the choreographed, scripted world of Gilead, we're trained, like the handmaids, to quickly perceive detours from the repeated rituals and expect these detours to receive punishment. And we wonder about the other handmaids' true personalities, hidden inside this cage of false behavior. Flashbacks to the women's pasts highlight the wrongness of the present. Here, the content of the past and present situations is drastically different, and so is the framing. In the present, the handmaids are usually low in the frame, or to the sides and corners, visually oppressed. In the flashbacks, June and Moira occupy the middle of the frame. These interplays between past and present help us grasp on a visceral level how much has changed, and how these characters arrived where they are. The flashbacks resemble our world and show us how the nightmare evolves step by step from a place that we recognize, unsettling us with the understanding that this could all conceivably happen.
When they slaughtered Congress, we didn't wake up. When they blamed terrorists and suspended the Constitution, we didn't wake up then either.
Flashbacks also make us come to like, or at least pity, Serena Joy. Even though she's Offred's enemy, we realize that she was a career woman, far smarter than her husband, who's now had to retreat into a domestic role that doesn't at all satisfy her.
You don't need to worry about this. I promise. We've got good men working on it.
Praise be.
Even if she's a victim of her own ideology.
Did you ever imagine a society like this?
A society that has reduced its carbon emissions by 78% in 3 years?
A society in which women can no longer read your book.
From the information given us in flashbacks and other scenes, we gather that the handmaids aren't just casualties of this new society. They're the foundation of Gilead's economy and existence.
You think they want to trade oranges? Don't be an idiot. Gilead only has one thing to trade that anyone wants. Red tags.
Offred and we start to realize that while the handmaids have been reduced to a commodity, this means that Gilead will collapse if they all refuse to obey. The arc of the first season of Handmaid's Tale is Offred's journey from not being one of those people who protests and rebels.
There's a network.
I don't know. I'm not that kind of person.
No one is until they have to be.
To stepping forward as the leader of a rebellion. We experience her transformation through camera and sound. Slow motion, her opinionated inner voice.
My name is June.
Music, and specific framing and blocking, all of which helps us to see her reach her breaking point and understand why there is no other way. Close-ups allow us to sense her intensifying defiance and hatred of the commander and Serena Joy. Contrasts between her facial expressions and her words
I'm fine.
start to reveal the increasing falseness and daring of her dialogue. Here, Offred's close-up plus the point of view shot tell us exactly what she's thinking. While speaking words of calm and obedience, she's contemplating bloody murder of her captors. The visual calls back to the thoughts she shared with us in a previous voiceover.
How hard would I have to press those shears into her neck before seeing blood?
Here, the intense close-ups of her mouth and eyes convey her visceral disgust after she's kissed the commander. The threatening score makes us feel constantly on edge. It saws at us like this world is constantly attacking Offred. But moments of other music in key scenes and often at the ends of episodes express Offred's inner world when it's out of joint with her outer. As if coming from within Offred's thoughts or memories, invigorating pop songs punctuate moments when we realize that she's still June inside and her hope is still alive. We get this for June's good feeling after the first time she plays Scrabble, only for the music to be abruptly cut out when she realizes Ofglin has been replaced. After Offred's heartened by the secret message she finds from the previous Offred, the music is uplifting too, while Offred walks in slow motion and behind her the other handmaids enter the frame and fall in step, as if she's their leader.
Lide de Bastardes Carver Dorum, bitches. We are handmaids.
With her bold voiceover, Offred reclaims the handmaid title. To her, being a handmaid now means being part of a community of women so strong that even the most inhuman conditioning won't stop them from being kind to each other. We again get hopeful music when Ofglin, or Emily, steals a car and runs a man over, and the music transforms the bloody scene, which is sure to be swiftly punished, into a moment of inspiration for Offred. And after Offred refuses to stone Janine, another slow-motion moment to emphasize the gravity of her defiance. We again get her internal soundtrack, as Nina Simone expresses how good it feels to start a revolution. In the final scene of the series, Offred is escaping the commander, escaping Gilead, and for a second, it even feels as though Offred is escaping the camera. When the camera lingers on an extreme close-up of Offred's red dress, we have the feeling that she's literally climbing out of the frame to where our eyes can't follow her. The very last song over the season finale end credits, Tom Petty's American Girl, ironically reminds us that the story is, after all, set in the USA, but it also alludes to Offred's unbreakable spirit. June's inner world has finally been expressed, and the hope of rebellion is alive. With no characters able to act or speak freely, the inventive audiovisual world of The Handmaid's Tale allows us to witness women growing strong, rebelling, and expressing themselves. These techniques help us connect emotionally to this nightmare, to feel what these women feel in a world that treats them as less than human.
Now I'm awake to the world.
The Handmaid's Tale isn't just the story of a dystopian future. It's also an abstract, symbolic way of talking about the present. Season 2 of the show, based on Margaret Atwood's novel, makes it all the more brutal to imagine Gilead's militant theocracy based on sex slavery coming to pass in the future. And of course, there's another important discussion to be had about horrific abuses of women that are going on right now in our world. But outside of those questions of more literal parallels, we can also read The Handmaid's Tale as allegory for how gender relationships have long been codified in Western society. Atwood, a Canadian author who published the novel in 1985, was on some level reflecting the society she saw around her, and the show has updated the story to reflect underlying gender and class relationships in our world today. What kind of deeper points is it making about our present?
A girl trapped in a box. She only dances when someone else opens the lid, when someone else winds her up.
The color-coded women of Gilead correspond to types that women tend to be sorted into in our society. The clash between the wives and handmaids reflects the long-standing Madonna whore complex, which separates women into two categories: virtuous but sexless, or sexy but sinful. The complex was named by Sigmund Freud, but splitting women into sacred Madonnas and degraded prostitutes has been around at least since the dawn of Judeo-Christian literature and art. The commanders in The Handmaid's Tale have made the Madonna whore complex literal through the Virgin Mary blue wives and the scarlet red handmaids. One category inspires affection and admiration but not desire. The other is desired but degraded and despised. The official rhetoric of Gilead denies that the handmaids are concubines.
We aren't concubines. We're two-legged wombs.
But the commanders tend to coerce their handmaids into illicit affairs, feeling the need to associate these red women with acts the commanders see as dirty.
She's not well.
I was well enough to suck your
Or with very stereotypically sexy signifiers, like red lipstick, shaving legs, nightclubs, and showing skin. By our society's standards of beauty, the handmaids aren't more attractive than the wives, who are played by Hollywood beautiful actresses. But the men have put the handmaids into this category of sex object, while they've desexualized the wives.
Don't.
In our culture, many socially accepted ideals of attractiveness are believed to stem from perceived signifiers of fertility and reproductive health. Gilead shows a heightened version of this. The society is so obsessed with reproduction that many men appear to see only fertility itself as attractive.
Look at you. My special girls. So beautiful.
Meanwhile, the wives reflect problems with how our society pigeonholes married women and especially mothers. At the end of the birth ritual, the wife steps in for the handmaid. This could symbolically represent the way that a woman immediately changes in society's eyes once she gives birth. The fertile, sexualized woman is cast aside, and the mother is now viewed as an entirely different person.
You should hear Naomi Putnam. She goes on and on about how her baby keeps her awake at night.
To complain about such a miracle.
She should appreciate every moment.
Modeled on the Virgin Mary, the wives become mothers without having sex. And this could reflect the way that mothers in our society are traditionally seen as pure and sexless. Interestingly, the commanders seem to allow more intellectual activity from the handmaids than from their wives, even though one of the wives' main duties is supposed to be companionship. The commander's first flirtations with Offred begin through playing Scrabble, while he refuses to let Serena play with him.
Do you want to play?
Love to, but I have work to do. And in any case, you know the law.
Yes, I do.
But the moderate mental freedom that Fred allows Offred stems from the degree to which wit plays a pleasurable role in flirtation.
Maybe I should let you in again.
and sex may invite emotional confidences.
How was your trip?
I was in Mexico to coordinate a trade delegation. A lot of difficult personalities, you have no idea.
The type of reading material Fred actually gives Offred, a beauty magazine, is a clue to just how much mental activity he wants from her.
10 ways to tell how he feels about you. Number 1, he brings you small gifts.
He encourages Offred to express herself, but by that he means to perform his image of the flirtatious bad girl.
I'll have to be more careful.
What's the fun in that?
When he tells Offred,
You don't have to be quiet here. You can be free.
the irony, of course, is that she's not enjoying this at all and is hardly holding herself back from expressing pleasure. Meanwhile, when she expresses any true aspects of herself, this displeases him, because it destroys the illusion that she's a plaything who only wants to worship and amuse him. So, in their relationship, we see all the hallmarks of what it means to view someone as a sex object and how limiting that truly is. Women who are not a mother/wife or a sex object wear a khaki green that blends into their surroundings, symbolizing that these women are invisible to the man at the center of this structure. And that reflects the way that our society does tend to marginalize women who are past childbearing age or not deemed sexually desirable. Meanwhile, the aunts in brown take on a more masculine role, getting respect in official situations only through becoming completely defeminized. Aunt Lydia, who struggles with harming the girls she does secretly love, represents those women who feel they must betray their sex or not act like a woman in order to hold power. All women in the show are seen and color-coded in relation to the powerful commander, who doesn't see women as whole people. Instead, he sees women only as their function in relation to him.
Everybody answers to God.
And you answer to me.
And to maximize efficiency, he uses multiple women to provide what he needs from the female gender. This kind of thinking, separating women into categories and reducing them to functions, is a long-standing problem we can clearly link to gender imbalances in our society today. The Gilead structure doesn't actually benefit most men, only a few men in the ruling elite. This whole structure exists to make a very small number of prominent men feel important. And this is also true in actual societies where women are more oppressed. Regular men, like Nick or Luke, are more free when women are also free.
Doesn't she look beautiful? Yes, sir.
The commanders, with their systems of exploitation, are able to come to power by feeding on fertility panic. Before their takeover, we see that American society was becoming paranoid over reproduction and the health of children.
Did you medicate Hannah this morning to lower her fever?
She was just a little warm, so I gave her some Tylenol.
Did you medicate her to bypass the school's fever policy?
And Gilead demonstrates that when a society becomes so obsessed with reproduction above all else, women especially, but almost all citizens, become less free. Citizens have more freedom in societies that don't sacrifice everything else for the sake of childbearing. Societies that culturally accept lifestyles including things like delayed marriage, same-sex partnerships, a work-life balance for mothers, and so on. These scenes showing the rise of Gilead are highlighting that there's a direct link between more reproductive choice and more freedom for everyone. Gilead pits women against each other.
Her fault. Her fault. Her fault.
But it's not as if this kind of conflict really appears so foreign to us.
It's taking forever.
Is it breach, dear? Did you hear that word?
No, ma'am.
If we strip away the dystopian context, there are a number of familiar things we recognize about this scene.
Would you like a cookie, dear?
You shouldn't spoil them. Sugar is bad for them.
Higher class women condescend to the lower class woman as if she's mentally inferior to them, treating her like a child.
Oh, isn't she well behaved?
They criticize her sexual purity because, despite their privilege and power over her, they also feel threatened by her youth and fertility.
Little whores, all of them.
As the story goes on, we can see that class is just as much of a divide as gender.
I'm clean now. I got a safe place to sleep every night and have people who are nice to me. And I want to keep it that way.
As Offred bonds together with her fellow handmaids, The story subtly implores women to help each other, and at least not to add to each other's burdens.
Friends don't stone their friends to death.
But we don't really see that kind of bonding happening much across class lines. Higher class women willingly participate in the oppression of the lower class women for their own benefit.
She bit you? Mm-hmm. You know how they get. I'm just counting the days until Angela's weaned and that girl is out of my house.
Which sadly feels accurate to viewers. On the political level, The Handmaid's Tale warns us to be vigilant against the small, gradual taking away of our rights and the cloaking of evil things in virtuous-sounding language.
You are sentenced to redemption.
On the personal level, the show is asking us to look a little closer at our own behavior and ask how we might fit into these structures of our society, in which the phenomena we're talking about here are less extreme but still very much present. We should do the hard work of examining how we relate to others and whether we're supporting oppressive power dynamics more than we realize. Whether the story might be speaking to a man who puts women into categories, a woman who doesn't help other women, or a person of privilege who thinks of others as less than. The message is that bad things happen when we don't treat all people as whole individuals worthy of respect and compassion, regardless of how you read The Handmaid's Tale. As a possible future, a literal fictional nightmare, or an exaggeration of class and gender relationships in Western society, the story urges us to be brave and keep hope alive, even when we feel powerless to change what we don't like in the world. We can't always win, but it's still worth it to be kind, to stand up for ourselves, and to do the right thing. That is how we stay human.
It's not worth it.
Yeah, it is.
That's The Take. Click here to watch a video we think you'll love, or here to check out a whole playlist of awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications.